I think it goes without saying that I was more than a little excited to see Sora join the Super Smash Bros. Roster as the final DLC character for Ultimate. Smash Bros. Is a franchise I've been actively following for years now, ever since Brawl released in 2008, and Sora was among one of the first characters that I wanted in. However, as you can imagine, my interest in Kingdom Hearts extends much further than just Sora as a character. When it comes to potential new content that can be brought to Smash from the series, there's a plethora of options. Roxas and Xion are both potential Echo Fighter candidates, Ansem and Xemnas would be completely unique and would bring some iconic villains to the roster, and I'd love to see Smash's take on Marluxia. But out of all of the potential choices, one stands up above the rest: Sora's lifelong best friend and eternal rival, Riku. There are a number of reasons as to why I think Riku should be in Smash. For one, he's just cool.
Riku is a sexy guy.
He's consistently been one of my favorite characters in any game he's appeared in, especially in KH1 and Chain of Memories. His descent into darkness and eventual redemption was really fun to follow. He's got an incredible character theme courtesy of KH2, and he's probably the most iconic Kingdom Hearts character that isn't Sora. The only other ones that would begin to compare in that regard are Roxas and Kairi, and while I love Kairi and Roxas would finally give us a character who can
dual wield,
I think Riku has the most potential to stand out among the three. But before I get into the minutia, I'd like to set some ground rules. Despite what I just said about his uniqueness, Riku will first and foremost be a semi-clone of Sora. It's only natural after all, as he is the player too, but don't think that'll mean that he won't have his own special flair. Essentially, think Luigi to Mario instead of Daisy to Peach. He'll share a lot of moves with Sora, but his core traits will be much different, with an entirely different set of animations to boot. Before I get into his moves, I'd like to talk about his general design and playstyle. I think it was genius to have Sora's design be based on his KH1 appearance. Regardless of which game is your favorite, KH1 was the foundation of the series' combat, and every game after that simply iterated on what was established by it. It's also quite possibly his most iconic design. It and his KH2 outfit are the only ones that pop into my head when I hear the name Sora. I feel that the same thing should be said for Riku, so, like Sora, I'd like to unify the bulk of his design under what was established from one specific game. That does leave a bit of an issue though, as while his appearance could be taken directly from it, he wasn't playable in KH1. Instead, I'd like to use what I would consider to be Riku's most defining game, Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories, specifically the PS2 remake, Chain of Memories. Now don't worry, I'm not suggesting that he should represent the gameplay of Recom. He's not going to be using cards, nor is he going to have a dark mode meter. I just mean that most of his attack animations will be taken from said game. Chain of Memories did a wonderful job in doing Riku's fighting style justice. He retains a lot of his most iconic attacks from the first game while getting a lot of cool and fleshy new techniques. This also means that Riku Ansem's moves are fair game, as they are things that he can do independent of Ansem's possession. I'll also be taking inspiration from his appearance from Dream Drop Distance, as he shared the main character role of that game with Sora. To go back to the discussion of appearance, I'd like to give Riku the same treatment as Sora regarding alternate costumes. I'm a firm believer in the idea that if there is a solid enough idea for a costume, and there is enough development time to commit to that idea, it's an avenue the developers should pursue when given the opportunity. It's a really easy way to appeal to fans and to pay better homage to the character's history. So, just like Sora, he will have 4 separate costumes, each with a color variation to reach the required 8. His first costume will, of course, be based on his regular design from KH1. Whether his hair is to change or not with his other alts, I'm not so sure. Sora's doesn't, and he still looks fantastic. And I've always liked Riku's hair in 1, so if they kept it the same, I'd be okay with it. For the alternate color, it can be based on the design of Terra, making his shirt gray, his pants beige, and the X on his chest dark red. Canonically speaking, Terra is the one who gave Riku the ability to use a Keyblade in Birth by Sleep, and is the one seen training with him during the opening of the Limit Cut episode in KH3, so I figured he was worth referencing. His second costume will be based off of his design from KH2, with its alternate color being based off of his appearance from Dream Drop Distance. I originally intended to use his 3D design as its own costume, as is the same with Sora, but then I realized it's pretty much just the same as his KH2 outfit. The colors of his jacket and pants are different enough, and Dream Drop is an important game in developing Riku's playstyle, so I think it could work as an alt. Now that being said, the absence of a dedicated 3D alt means that there is room for another choice in alternate costume, and for it I've chosen his really cool Riku Ansem design from KH1, a design so iconic it returned in Recom for Riku's dark form, as well as being the signature outfit of Riku Replica. The alternate color will be based on Ansem, Seeker of Darkness. The association between these two goes without saying, so referencing it is a no-brainer. Hell, they even have the same emblem on their clothes. For this alt, Riku's jacket will turn black with gold accents, his pants off-white, his boots black with silver accents, and his coattails light gray. And for his final costume, it will, of course, be based off of his design from KH3. For the alternate color, I think it should be based off of Mickey's outfit, specifically from KH2 as I think it's the most visually distinct. This will make his jacket and pants red with accents of white and yellow. Ever since the ending of KH1, Mickey has been to Riku what Donald and Goofy are to Sora, so I think having it be referenced in this color was important. The last thing to talk about regarding design is Riku's choice of weapon, as it isn't as easy to pin down as the Kingdom Key was for Sora. Riku has used a variety of weapons throughout the games. His first one isn't even a Keyblade, and picking only one would inevitably leave someone disappointed. So, why not have the weapon depend on the costume? This is something I really wish they did for Sora as well, but for him the Kingdom Key is the standard and iconic design, so I get why they stuck with it. But for Riku, there is no one set weapon. In fact, with the alts that I've decided to pick for him, there happens to be a unique weapon for each of the 4 costumes. His KH1 outfit could make use of his original weapon, Soul Eater. His KH2 outfit could use his classic Way to the Dawn Keyblade. His Dark Riku costume could use the Keyblade of People's Hearts, one I've always been particularly fond of, and his KH3 alt could use his giant car key named Braveheart. There might be a bit of an issue when it comes to matching hitbox placements on the different weapons, but I feel that they can make subtle design changes to them to make them all visually close enough. As previously stated, Riku will be a semi-clone of Sora, with his main differences being better ground mobility, damage, and kill power with the greater fall speed, but at the expense of aerial movement and a lower jump height. Unlike Sora, he won't have a crawl, but he will have a wall jump, with the animation being based off of the flow motion wall jump from 3D, pink particle effects and all. Now comes a lightning round of minute animation references. You ready? This is his idle stance, his walk, his run, his jump, his double jump, his forward roll, and his backwards roll. I'll do both you and myself a favor and stop there. Now that I've sufficiently wasted enough time, let's finally move on to the moves. Typically in Smash Brothers, when characters are similar to each other in their home series, they'll have similar traits when adapted to the game. Think how both Ryu and Ken have light and heavy moves that are cancelable into specials, or to a lesser extent, the fact that all of the plumbers have a variation of the classic headbutt for their up smashes, all with their own unique animation flourishes suited to them as characters. This type of design exists for the sake of giving fans of certain characters and series an air of familiarity when playing another representative of that series, as the gameplay mechanics that apply to one character in a given game usually applies to others. Some might scoff at that, which I can understand. There is a point where relying on it too much can lead to animosity against a series that doesn't deserve a harmful reputation, but on the whole I think it's a good idea. They should play similarly in Smash because they play similarly in their home games. Anything else would be different for the sake of different, instead of doing what fits best for the character. It's because of this that I've decided to plagiarize Sora's 3-hit combo mechanic, meaning that Riku's jab, forward tilt, neutral air, and forward air are all his specific variations of that technique. Some alterations would likely have to be done to prevent the infamous Nair loops from being possible, as the only reason that Sora can get away with it is the fact that he's comparatively lackluster in areas that Riku would no longer struggle with. But that's easily fixable by having the second hit have more landing lag when cancelled by hitting the ground. That alone vastly differentiates their playstyles. So, Riku's jab will be based on his default 3-hit combo from Recom. His forward tilt and forward air, also from Recom, will be based on his default combo when in dark form, and his default aerial combo respectively. And his neutral air will use the first hit of his aerial combo from Dream Drop, before transitioning into the same animation as his forward air. Functionally, they are identical to Sora, with the same differences in damage, positional advantage, etc. And he can likewise stop his F-tilt short for a fast kill move. Riku's dash attack could be this unique dodge roll slide from Dream Drop. Think of it as acting somewhere between Sora's dash attack and Cloud's down tilt. This move would be able to 2-frame in low profile, but it wouldn't be a kill move. It would instead send opponents straight upward for a potential follow-up. I think the game could use some more dash attacks with utility. Riku's up tilt is a familiar one, the same as Sora's actually, spinning his keyblade above his head like a helicopter blade. This animation comes from his laser reflect animation during the Xemnas boss fight in KH2. Solid enough as an anti-air and can even kill at hypersense. And finally, Riku's down tilt will be a copy of Mii Sword Fighters. With the exception of his car key, which I never liked, all of Riku's weapons are much sharper than the default Kingdom Key, which always made it feel a bit more dangerous as a weapon. So I wanted to show that off with some stabbing moves, which is also reflected in his back, up, and down airs. Riku's back air is a horizontal stab behind him, taken from this render that I cannot for the life of me find the source of. Functionally, it will be similar to Shulk's after he extends the Monado, with less range obviously. This is a pretty average back air in terms of frame data, but it has a nasty sweet spot at the tip, which can kill early if spaced correctly. In fact, all of his stabbing aerials have this attribute, like his up air, also taken from Mii Sword Fighter. It's a strictly vertical stab above him. This move requires precision, which means it isn't amazing for juggling, but it's fast enough to be able to confirm out of his dash attack at lower percents. And lastly, his down air will be based on the Dark Break Sleight from Recom. This move would be a stall and fall, having Riku drop down quickly with his keyblade below him, and bouncing off both opponents and shields when landing on them. This move would also have a spiking hitbox at the start of it, essentially think Greninja's down air but with a disjoint. Now for his smash attacks. Just like Sora, Riku's forward smash will be an exaggerated version of his default combo finisher. Nothing more to it, it's a pretty simple move. This is an interesting one. His up smash could be based on the Balloon family of spells from Dream Drop. Now before you say it, no, I'm not including this as an attack to reference the meme of balloon spam in 3D. I'm very much not a fan of that approach to moveset design. I'm including this as an attack because I think it could have an interesting mechanic that isn't usually applied to normal moves. That being, attacks that change depending on their charge level. each increasing in range and kill power. Inputting an up smash at a 0 to mid-level charge will have Riku use the base balloon spell, but instead of summoning them around him, it'll be a single balloon that spawns overhead that he pops immediately. At a mid to high level charge, this attack will turn into the upgraded Balloon Ra, having him summon 3 balloons above his head in a cluster that explode one after the other, the final hit being the one that knocks away. For comparison, think of it with the pacing of Duck Hunt's up smash. At full charge, this attack will turn into Balloon Ga, having him summon a massive balloon above his head that explodes into 3 smaller balloons, the final balloon being the biggest of the 3 with the highest kill power. The explosion of the initial balloon will pull opponents in, allowing for the remaining 3 to connect. This is an incredibly versatile tool that doesn't really exist in Smash Brothers yet. Most moves that change properties by charging them are specials, so I think this is a really unique and interesting idea for a normal. And finally, a comparatively less complex move. Riku's down smash will be this ground slam he does as Riku Ansem, summoning a small shockwave of energy around it. Think a faster but weaker version of Robin's Levin sword down smash. It covers on both sides and is the strongest where the sword collides with the ground, but since he doesn't leap off the ground like Sora does, this would be worse at catching recoveries. Next are his throws. Sword characters generally don't have a good grapple game, and Riku would be no different. But due to his comparatively stubby range for a swordie, I think that one of his throws should be able to kill. He'll grab with a single outstretched hand, and he would pummel by kicking the opponent's shins, because that sounds funny. His forward throw would be just like Sora's, performing his default aerial combo starter from Recom. His back throw can be based on the spinning lariat he does in Dark form, similar in function to Sora's minus the kill power, with the animation having him catch the opponent on his blade instead of grabbing them directly. For his up throw, there's a theory that Sora's is based on his using an item animation. Personally, I'm not sure if that's true, but who says it can't be for Riku, specifically the aerial version of the animation from Dream Drop. And his down throw will be similar to Sora's. It's based on this animation of him throwing Xemnas during his boss fight at the end of KH2. In KH2, Riku throws him into the air, but they could easily alter the animation so that he throws the opponent into the ground. At lower percents, this move would send at a low enough angle to be able to get a follow-up, but considering how much effort he puts into the throw, I think it would be interesting if this scaled high enough to be able to kill off the top. Down throws aren't usually kill throws, so this would make him unique in that regard, plus it's yet another thing to differentiate him from Sora. And finally, we have reached the special moves. An important aspect to Riku's development in pretty much every game he's appeared in is his struggle with darkness. In most fantasy material, light is seen as the objective good, and darkness is seen as the objective bad. Kingdom Hearts certainly treats it like that, but for Riku it couldn't be less true. Towards the end of Chain of Memories, Riku is faced with an important decision by Diz. After spending the whole game trying to fight off Ansem's possession, he is asked whether or not he should pursue the path of darkness or the path of light. Due to some moral support he received from a vision of Kairi, and his rejection of locking away the darkness in his heart by Naminé, he ultimately decides to pursue neither, but instead his own path in between light and darkness, the road to dawn. This might honestly be one of my favorite Riku moments in the entire series. He continues to show up and do important things in later games, but in my opinion, this moment was the finale of his character arc, and it's something I very much wanted to preserve in Smash Brothers. This is the reason why I didn't give him a dark mode meter. Sure, it would make him more unique mechanically, and it would show off the delicate balance he needs to take to not get overrun by darkness, but I also think it would kind of go against his character arc. He's no longer that confused kid struggling with identity. He knows who he is, and he embraces it. He can use both the powers of light and the powers of darkness with confidence, not hesitation, and it's in his special moves that you can really see his true power come to fruition. For his neutral special, he will use the very confusingly named Dark Aura attack from KH2, which I've decided to rename Dark Cannon to reference a similar attack used in the Session limit. Upon activation, Riku will point his Keyblade out and shoot 3 small projectiles. It acts pretty much the same as Palutena's Auto Reticle, but it only loosely homes in on opponents, and the knockback of the projectiles are very weak. It's just a minor zoning tool. However, that's not all. For something with a bit more punch, you could hold the special button down instead to have him use his iconic Dark Firaga ability. For it, Riku will rear his arm back, before blasting a shot of dark energy from his palm. It will be about the same size as Sephiroth's Flare, with the same amount of wind-up, but it would be quite a bit faster, and can pack some solid kill power at high percents. His side special will have him use Inverse Burst. This is a combo move that he performs alongside Mickey, and considering how Sora didn't bring any Disney references to the game with his inclusion, I don't think Riku would either, even if I think an exception could and should have been made for them, but whatever. Upon activating side special, Riku will start spinning rapidly, shooting at orbs of light and darkness as he moves forward. The distance he'll travel will be slightly farther than the first input of Sonic Blade, making it better for burst movement but worse as a recovery mix-up, especially considering that it can't be chained together a la Sonic Blade, and using it puts him into freefall. You could also change direction mid-spin, but only from side to side. The final thing worth noting is that the projectiles Riku will shoot while spinning aren't as widespreading as they are in the original game. Here, they only shoot out a small distance. I didn't want to overload his kit with projectiles as I don't think he should be a zoner, and considering he already has 2, I think making this move too faithful would be overdoing it. Next is his up special, which, just like his neutral special, is different depending on if you tap or hold the button. Tapping the button will have him perform the Maelstrom ability. For it, Riku will surround himself in light and rise into the air while spinning his Keyblade above and below him. It beats out out aerial sweep in terms of distance, but it can't be cancelled into a side B like Sora's can. It's a fairly standard recovery move that is almost strictly vertical, but it can be angled by about 10 degrees in each direction. Holding the button down will instead have him use a Dark Maelstrom. This move will function mostly the same, except Riku will travel slightly farther and surround himself with 2 blades, before merging them together for one colossal upward slash at the end of the attack. As you might expect, this is a beast of a kill move. Where it and regular Maelstrom really differ are how they interact with the ledge. Just like Sephiroth's Blade Dash and Octaslash, regular Maelstrom snaps to ledges while Dark Maelstrom hits above it. I said before that I wanted Riku to struggle in the air compared to Sora, but I still wanted him to be competent off stage, so giving him a long distance, albeit linear recovery, and a burst movement, albeit risky to use side special, felt right to me. And finally, we have reached the down special. These are often a moveset's wild card, where the character's craziest tricks can be found. So, will Riku's down special be something that breaks the conventions of not only Smash, but will also change the entire industry of fighting game and moveset design itself? Nope. I'm giving him a down B counter. For no other reason than, well, I think it fits. Guarding is a quintessential aspect to Kingdom Hearts combat in all games it appears in, with a variation of the counterattack ability in each of the numbered titles. KH1 has the aforementioned counterattack, in which Sora's down special is based on, KH2 has counter guard, and KH3 carried over the reprisal ability from Birth by Sleep and Dream Drop Distance. A mechanic with that many appearances is certainly not nothing. I think the Smash community's animosity towards counters is both warranted and unwarranted. On one hand, they have become a common aspect to moveset design in Smash Brothers, often in places where they don't necessarily belong, but they still make sense to be on certain fighters, and I don't think that we should just erase the possibility of the mechanic existing on more characters simply because other people are already doing it. Plus, this video is being made with the idea that an inclusion of a character like this can only be done in a sequel game, and a common idea I've seen regarding a sequel to Ultimate is a soft reboot, where a lot of characters would get cut and the remaining would get their movesets revamped. So, in that hypothetical new game, I don't see an issue with a new character having a counter as a down special. Plus, it wasn't going to be a simple, you hit me, I hit you back kind of move anyway. Well, okay, it is, but there is more utility with it, trust me. For Riku's down special, he will use Dark Barrier, his unique guarding stance from Dream Drop Distance. Due to the unique mechanics of Recom, he doesn't actually have a guard in that game, but the idea of Riku using a barrier to defend himself is an idea that goes all the way back to KH2, where it's accessible through a reaction command Sora can initiate. Upon activation, Riku will conjure up a barrier around himself. Any physical attacks landed on it will cause him to retaliate by shattering the barrier. However, this move is incredibly weak. I'm talking set knockback. It's really just a get off me tool. With that being said, if a projectile collides with the barrier, instead of shattering it, it will just bounce off, sending it back with a nasty damage multiplier. And since it's a full 360 guard, it doesn't suffer the same back weakness as Sora does. Yes, this move's main use case is as a reflector, not just a physical counter, which to be honest is something I'm surprised Sora doesn't have. With a few unimportant exceptions, when you guard a projectile in Kingdom Hearts, 9 times out of 10 it will get sent back to the person throwing it. Some bosses straight up expect you to do that, such as Ice Titan and Lingering Will to name a few. In a perfect world, Sora would also have this aspect to his counter, but considering he doesn't, I think it would be interesting for Riku to have it. And at last, the final smash. For it, Riku will use the actual move that's called Dark Aura, which is Riku Ansem's Desperation move in KH1 and his 999 Sleight in Recom. Upon activation, Riku will do a running slash forward. Any opponents hit by it will be brought to the top of the screen. Riku then pursues them, glowing with dark energy as he raises his Keyblade to the sky, before charging at the foe continuously, appearing from and vanishing into dark portals, before striking the foe back to the ground and blowing them away with a massive shockwave of dark energy. Other than maybe the session limit, which I honestly think would fit better on Sora, there isn't really anything else Riku would use for his final smash. It's just too iconic and cool. And that's it for the moves. Now for some miscellaneous animations. For Riku's up taunt, he could beckon you with his weapon held out while saying,
"What are you afraid of?"
This is a reference to his mini-boss fight on Destiny Islands in KH1, where he'll taunt you if you don't interact with him. His side taunt will have him pull out 3 of the cards from Castle Oblivion before putting them back into Hammer Space. This is a reference to his Dive to the Heart artwork, where he does exactly that. And finally, Riku's down taunt will have him cheer towards the camera while raising one arm to the sky. This is a reference to the animation of him completing a dive route in Dream Drop Distance. It also echoes Sora's down taunt, where he does a similar action. His intro animation could have him appear in an organization coat before discarding it to reveal himself. I originally thought that he should appear out of a dark portal, but it's established in KH2 that he can't canonically do that anymore because he cut his ties with the Realm of Darkness after returning to his normal body, and I want Riku and Smash to represent him after he's completed his character arc. Yes, I did think way too much about this, what do you ask? As for victory screens, his first one will have him rest his Keyblade over his shoulder while shaking his index finger in front of the camera. During it, he'll say,
"Giving up already?"
This is a reference to his level up animation in Recom. His voice line would also change if he was fighting against Sora, where instead he will say,
"Come on, Sora, I thought you were stronger than that."
His second victory screen could have him hold out an empty hand towards the camera to summon his Keyblade, where he then points it upright to inspect it, then holds it diagonally above himself, while saying,
You still don't got it.
This is a reference to the iconic Delivery Boy scene in KH1, where Riku steals Sora's Keyblade, which I always saw as a victory for him. And for his final victory pose, he'll reach off-screen and pull Sora into the camera's view, before putting him into a headlock and giving him a noogie while they both laugh. They are best friends after all. This is a reference to the ending sequence of KH1, where Sora fondly remembers his childhood friendship with Riku right after trapping him in hell. And that's Riku in Super Smash Bros. If you couldn't tell, I put a lot of thought into this moveset. Many of these ideas have been swimming around in my head for at least several months, but I was never confident enough to put my thoughts onto a page, as the standards and expectations I had in place for not only Smash's designs, but my own ability to match them were impossibly high. But then I realized something. None of this is set in stone. If Riku does ever get into the game, he could function totally different from the way I've described. He could have some really crazy mechanic that I never thought of, or a totally different design philosophy based on what appearance he should be based on. I'm not here to compete with Smash's designs. I'm here to contribute my own ideas, completely uninfluenced by anyone else's, and I can't express just how good it feels to finally have the confidence to put my ideas out there. If you disagree about how I decided to interpret Riku, that's fine. If you disagree with my decision to even want Riku in the game, that's also fine. Ultimately, we all value Smash for different reasons, which is part of the reason why it's just so great. And with that being said, it's time to bring this to a close. Thank you for watching. Have a good night. Open the door, lead me into everlasting darkness.